tutorial, we're going to learn to make this hooded scarf called the Mimi hooded scarf, and it is just what it sounds like. It is a scarf with a hood attached. And if you'd like to get your copy of the pattern to follow along, you can click the link here on screen, and a link will also be in the video description field just below the video. This is what I would call an advanced beginner pattern. If you're comfortable with knitting and purling, I'm going to show you everything else you need to know to be able to work this, which is working the basket weave stitch, 3 needle bind off, seaming, and even a single crochet edging, and a single crochet edging using an eyelash yarn for that buzz. This is, it doesn't always have to be worn as a hood. It can be worn as a scarf as well, and I find that it keeps my ears warm, keeps my hair out of the wind. It's a pretty comfortable thing to wear, and it's also very cute and quick to make as a gift. So everything, you can work this on circular or straight needles. If I knit everything on circular needles, even flat pieces, but if you're more comfortable using straights, that's fine. No part of this pattern is actually knit in the round. So you'll need some worsted weight yarn, and the details for the yarn that I used in my pattern are all in the pattern on my website and in the video description field below. You'll need, that's a size 8 needle, size 8 US, a crochet hook, and then an eyelash yarn, and of course the details for this yarn are also in the video description field. So to get started, we are going to talk about working the basket weave stitch, which we'll cover next. A quick overview of how this is put together is we have a scarf piece that's knit flat and a hood piece that's also knit flat. One piece is seamed onto the other, and then the crochet edging is done all around. And the entire thing is done in this basket weave stitch, which is nice. It's pretty on both sides, and it doesn't curl. It has enough knit and purl stitch combinations in there that there isn't any curling on the fabric, which is ideal. You don't want something like this to start curling up when you're wearing it. So you have your pattern, and you'll see in there that there is an 8-row basket weave stitch pattern in there. You're going to want to use a stitch counter or a row counter and keep track of the row that you're on, because if you do mess up and you get right sides and wrong sides mixed up, your fabric will change. It won't look the way you want it to. But you'll find that you memorize the rows after a few repeats. It's not difficult to memorize. Even though I have the rows memorized, I still use the row counter to tell me which row that I'm on. I know what row 5 looks like, or how to work it, but I like to know which row I'm on while I'm doing it, and that's how I've been working this. I'm actually making a second one now for a Christmas gift, so I'm really familiar with this pattern right now. It is an 8-row repeat, meaning that you'll work row 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. When you complete row 8, you'll go back and work row 1 again. And the pattern gives you specifics for how many stitches to cast on and how many times to work the pattern repeat for both the scarf and the hood pieces. But first, before we go any further, let's take a look at working the basket weave stitch and combining knit stitches and purl stitches. Well, before I show you this, let me show you this. This is the finished basket weave stitch in the correct gauge. It's really very pretty. And the back of the work is different. It's also very nice. That almost looks like a bamboo stitch on the back and the basket weave. But really, when you're wearing it, only this side shows. Well, depending how you wear it, I suppose. Okay, and here is a bulky sample of the stitch. This is the right side of the stitch. You see, before it's blocked, it is quite bumpy. The basket weave part is really pronounced, which I think looks cool, but blocking has to happen. So it kind of flattens out after you block it. It's still very pretty. I kind of wish that you never had to wash it or block it. And here's the wrong side, which is kind of confusing before blocking. Okay, I'm not going to go through every row of this stitch pattern with you because it's really just a combination of knit stitches and purl stitches. I just want to make sure you're comfortable switching between the two. So I am going to start working a wrong side row, and actually I need to start with a knit stitch. Okay. So I'm going to follow the pattern for the number of knit stitches and purl stitches I need to do. I'm ready to work a purl stitch, and to do that, to go from knit to purl, I want to pull my working yarn forward between the two needles to work the purl stitch. And when I'm done working the number of purl stitches, I want to pull the working yarn back between the two needles to knit again. And to work the purl stitch, the yarn forward between the two needles, purl as many stitches as I'm supposed to, the yarn back between the two needles to knit. Now there's something I want to show you. I'm going to undo some of these stitches because I actually don't have a lot of working yarn here. I did this sample and cut the yarn because it's so many balls of yarn to bring with me on video shoot day. Okay, there's a trick that I do to keep really good tension between the knit and purl stitches, because all of this yarning forward and yarning back with the working yarn creates a drag. Obviously, the little bit that yarn has to travel between a knit and a purl stitch does create a drag and can create gaps in your work. Now, you don't have to do this. I've found that this keeps my stitches really tidy. I'm ready to work a purl stitch now. I yarn forward and work the purl stitch. Now, this is showing up pretty well. There is a good drag between those two needles when I yarn forward to work the purl stitch. So I want to be sure to tighten that stitch up. So this is what I do. I yarn forward to work the purl stitch, and after I work it, I yarn back and tug. And you don't have to knit like me to do that. You can pull it with this hand or pull it with your hand if you're knitting continental with your left hand. But tugging on that first purl stitch will eliminate the biggest gap that you get. And then you can go on knitting normally. And then switching from purl to knit, I'll yarn back and tug and then knit. I'll show you again. Yarn forward to purl, and then I want to tighten that stitch up. So I'm going to yarn back and tug, and then go back to purling. And then when I go to knitting, I yarn back and tug and knit. And I just went off pattern there to demonstrate that, but don't get confused. All the stitches are very clear in the written pattern. Next up, we're going to talk about the 3-needle bind off and seaming the pieces together. You're going to follow the pattern using your row counter and working the basket weave stitch until you have a finished scarf. And remember, for reasons of example, I always knit things up in smaller pieces and super bulky so you can see what I'm doing. Your scarf is going to be much longer than this and not this bulky. You'll have a finished scarf and you'll have a finished hood, well, almost finished hood. You'll have everything still on the needles ready to work the 3-needle bind off. And the 3-needle bind off is what we have at the top of the hood. It is a way to bind off and seam the two halves together at once. So it's a really cool technique. That's all I need to say about it. Let's go ahead and take a look at how it's done. This is my hood, and I happen to have it on circular needles. You can either use circular needles or straight needles. It doesn't matter which one you use, because it's knit flat anyway. The deal is that you want to have half the stitches on one needle and half on the other. So if you're using straight needles, that would mean 2 straight needles, or with circulars, you can keep the same circulars going and just pull the cord out long between the 2 halves. You still have your working yarn attached, and you will need a 3rd needle for the 3-needle bind off. This is such a cool technique. Oh, very important. You see the wrong side of the work is facing out. The right side is inside. And I've folded it with the right sides on the inside, the wrong side of the work facing out. That's because this seam leaves a ridge, and we want the ridge to be on the inside of the hat, the hood. So I have all the stitches crammed up to close to the tip of the needles, and I have my 3rd needle. My working yarn is attached to, in this case, it's attached to the stitch on the back needle. Take my third needle, I go in as if to knit on the front stitch, I go in as if to knit on the back stitch. I wrap the needle and I pull it through both, and then pull those 2 stitches off the needle. And then I do the same thing again, through the front stitch, through the back stitch, wrap it, pull it through 1, pull it through 2, off. Now, because I have 2 stitches on the right needle, I can go ahead and start binding off. I like to use the back needle in my left hand to grab that first stitch and pull it over the second in a normal bind off way. So, and then I go back to knitting again, through the front stitch, through the back stitch, wrap it, pull it through both, those 2 stitches off the left needle, and then I'm going to use the tip of the back needle to pull 1 stitch over the other. And you'll finish this all the way across the row. Actually, if you don't mind, I will just go ahead and finish this very quickly because I want to use this piece in the next bit I demonstrate. So you can watch me work 3 needle bind off a whole bunch of times. I split a stitch there. Okay, that was fun. And just like with any bind off, you're left with 1 loop. Make that loop really big. Pull the tail end through and tighten it up. And I'm going to shorten this to keep it out of the way. When I turn it the right way, I have a beautiful bind off, perfectly matched up to the other side. Nice, huh? Okay, there's my little tiny hood. And now I want to talk about seaming. And this is all explained in the pattern exactly how to do this. When you finish knitting these pieces, you're going to want to steam them out. Steam block them 2 measurements. Flattens them out a little bit, makes seaming a little bit easier. And then you will follow the pattern to find the center point of the scarf and the center point of the hood and match them up. And you can use clippy markers to mark this exactly. And you will be much more careful than I'm being here on these bulky samples. So you put a few clips in like that, and if you've left a long tail on the hood cast on, you already have a yarn to start seaming with. And that's what I'll do. I don't usually leave long tails to seam with, but it happens to be here. Oh, let me show you really quickly. If you didn't leave a long tail to seam with, it's no big deal. You can just take a new piece of yarn and put it through the very corner of the hood and pull it through and put it through the same hole again. And you've attached a new piece of yarn. Hopefully you will be seaming with the same color you knit it with, but since that color doesn't seem to be, this light blue color doesn't seem to be anywhere in front of me, so I use the purple. But I have this. So I've got my clips in place. I'll jump over here and go through a corner stitch over here. Now this is really just a standard mattress stitch, but it ends up being a little bit different because we're seaming a cast on row to a side edge. And in theory, because knit stitches are wider than they are tall, you're going to be picking up every stitch along the hood and skipping some stitches along the side edge. But do not get too hung up on this, because it will depend on exactly how you steam blocked it out, exactly what the stretch was, and it will also make a difference if your stitch and row gauge are different from mine. And I say in the pattern, it is often difficult to get both stitch and row gauge to match up with a designer's pattern, so focus on stitch gauge. For the pattern, I believe I was getting 6.5 rows per inch. If you are off from that, don't worry about it. You do have to be a little bit self-reliant and figure this out a little bit on your own. It's really a good practice because pretty much every seaming project ends up being a little bit like this. So in theory, I will pick up every stitch along the hood and pick up most of the stitches along the side of the scarf, but these clipping markers are in place to keep me on track with how I'm doing if I need to skip more or fewer on the scarf. Okay, that said, we're going to be picking up ladder rungs. And if I go in to the very edge here and go under 2 ladder rungs over here, then I'm ready to jump over to this side and go under 2 ladder rungs over here. And they're going to look different because this is a side seam and that is a cast on edge. But really what you're looking to do is to pick up the same amount on each side and to never stray up into the work further on either side and stay consistent with your seam. I'm going to go back into the same hole I came out of and pick up 2 rungs, and go back into the same hole I came out of and pick up 2 rungs. And I like to leave it loose as I work the mattress stitch because it's easy to see where I came out of to go back into the same hole. And this is kind of an adventure in seaming because you're working into the cast on edge here, and you're working into knits and purls here, and you're working knit and purls over here. So it's always changing. Just be consistent with what you're doing. So I have a little bit going there. I'm going to go ahead and tighten it up now. I tighten it up a whole bunch and then I can stretch it back out again. Now, this is where it's going to make a difference. This is how I'm going to figure out each time I tighten up, I will see how I match up with my next clippy marker to see if I need to skip stitches on either side. I'm matching up really well. Let me do a few more. I'm actually going to loosen it up so I can see where I came out last time. Okay. Let's see. Well, it's looking like I have some extra fabric. I kind of did this on purpose. I have some extra fabric on this side. I need to eat up more stitches on the hood and fewer on the scarf. So I am going to skip one on the hood, pick one up over here, work the next one on the hood, pick one up over here, skip one on the hood, tighten this up and see how it looks. And I still have I have maybe one extra stitch, one more stitch I need to skip over here. That is what I wanted to show you. I want to show you how to use your markers, see how you're doing, and to get and to constantly adjust so that your mattress stitch is even and smooth all the way across. So we were great here, and then I skipped a couple stitches here. I'll do a bit more, see what I need to do on either side, and it isn't it isn't a problem with your knitting. It really has to do with exactly how things are blocked out, how things are lined up. It will all end up looking good in the end. Next up, we're going to talk about the crocheted edging. Once you get the hood bound off with 3-needle bind off and seamed the scarf, you're ready for the fun part, which is the crocheted edging around the whole thing. You don't have to know how to crochet to do this. I'm going to show you the simple stitch that you can do all the way around. If you are a die-hard knitter that doesn't pick up crochet hooks, you can still work this by picking up and knitting and binding off at the same time. It's essentially the exact same thing. I think it's easier to work with a crochet hook. Let's go ahead and take a look. Here is the finished edge with the eyelash yarn. And the yarn that I used, I don't want to get the name wrong, it's in the video description field and it's on the pattern and it's on my website, the name and color and everything of this yarn. This is a great eyelash yarn. You can see it doesn't shed. It doesn't shed. That's the word I'm looking for. There's potential with this kind of yarn to leave little tiny fibers everywhere in your life until it stops shedding, but this did not shed. Okay. So here's my finished bulky sample, and I will show you how to work this in the eyelash yarn, but first I want to show you with a smooth yarn. It's going to be much easier for you to see. I have my crochet hook, and I'm going to start here in, this is the bind off edge. You can start anywhere really. I put my hook under both legs of the first stitch, wrap the yarn and pull it through, and then I'm going to chain one. And the hardest thing about crocheting is ultimately easier than knitting, most people will agree. The hardest thing is getting tension in your left hand if you are a right-handed knitter. If you're a continental knitter, it's pretty easy. But you really have to find what's comfortable for you, how to keep tension. I keep tension kind of a weird way. You may or may not want to copy the way I do it. Most people do a wrap around the pinky. Let me show you again. A wrap around the pinky and then up under like this. You want to chain one stitch, which means coming under the yarn this way with the hook, turning the yarn upside down and pulling it through. By turning the hook upside down and pulling it through, you match the teardrop shape of the stitch on the hook, and it makes it easier to pull through. Okay, then I'm going to go into the next stitch under both legs of the V, go up under the yarn and pull it through, go up under the yarn and pull it through both. That's the repeat. After we get the yarn attached, that's the repeat. Go into the next stitch, grab the yarn and pull it through, go up under the yarn and pull it through both. And you know you've finished a crochet stitch when there's only one loop left on the hook. Into the next one, pull up a loop, grab the yarn, pull through both. Pull up a loop, grab the yarn, pull through both. And this is single crochet. And that was my stomach growling. Okay, so I've shown you how to do this. I actually just split the yarn there. I've shown you how to do this with this yarn, this smooth purple yarn. And now this is the fun part, to use the fur yarn. This is really forgiving yarn. Not forgiving, I don't know how to say it. If you make a mistake with this fuzzy yarn, no one's going to know. It is caught up in the fuzz. So if you are doing single crochet for maybe the first time, what a great way to do it. Because if you are a little bit off on one of your stitches, no one will ever be the wiser. So I just attach the yarn, grab it and pull it through. I'm going to do the exact same thing I did before. Why can't I find this spot? There we go. Pull up a loop. See, you can't even tell I have two loops on there, but I know I do. Grab the yarn and pull through both. Stab into the work, grab the yarn, pull up a loop, grab the yarn, pull through both. It doesn't even really make sense for me to demonstrate with this yarn, other than the fact that it's cool looking. I don't normally like eyelash yarns or novelty yarns. I like good old-fashioned wool, but this is pretty cool for a trim. Okay, one more thing I want to show you here. Oh, let me give you a little secret. If you need to walk away from your work while you're crocheting with this eyelash yarn, pull a really long loop. Whatever your active loop is, pull it really long, because if you leave it short, you will never find it again. Okay. I'm going to take one of these little bamboo pins. You can really use anything, a knitting needle or a tapestry needle. And then every time you see, I think this is really fun. I could actually do this all day. Every time you see a little loop, you can pick it with the pin and release the fur. We've never done anything like this in a VeryPink video before. But when I was doing this, when I was knitting up my sample, I would crochet, you know, about a foot and then go back and do this for a foot. And it became really obvious which parts I had picked out and which parts I hadn't. And you'll do that all the way around. And when you get to a corner, you can put 2 or 3 single crochets in the corner to help you turn the corner. And when you get to an inside corner, you'll find that you can skip the very inside to get a smooth edge. But ultimately, this yarn is so forgiving if you end up skipping a stitch or throwing an extra one in there, it is very unlikely that it will show. I think that's it. Have fun making your hooded scarf and good luck.